Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another director battle. Today's is Louis Buñuel against David Lynch. Now, David Lynch, you could easily say, isn't really influenced by films and filmmakers. He's more interested by, more inspired by music and art and sculpture. But I do think one director that might have had some influence on him is Louis Buñuel, especially L'Âge d'Or and Chien Andalou. I think must have had some influence on Lynch's earlier short experimental films that would turn into Eraserhead. This is another harder one than I thought it was going to be. I know this is supposed to be favourites, and Lynch is at the moment ranked higher in my favourite list than Buñuel, but a lot of that has to do with the fact I need to rewatch a lot of Buñuel, especially his early stuff like Nazarene and Elle and Los Advogados. Yeah, this is harder than I actually thought. So Buñuel kind of started all this surrealist movement with Salvador Dali, L'Âge d'Or, which I think hasn't aged that well, and Chien Andalou, which has aged very well, and Chien Andalou continues to be transgressive and kind of perfect. I think L'Âge d'Or is wonderful, but I do think it could have been a little bit shorter. And then he did a lot of his early films in Mexico, but some of his other films, like Exterminating Angel, which was in my favourite 150 list last year. Obviously Buñuel still had that kind of absurdist streak, that surrealist streak, but he also had a lot of social critique, class critique, religious critique, which make his films, I think, kind of eternal, and there'll always be something in them. I think they've aged very well, but again, I do really need to rewatch a bunch of his stuff. And again, another essential collection from Studio Canal, which I would highly recommend. This has Diary of a Chambermaid, Belle de Jour, which I've never been a huge fan of. Belle de Jour, it's still very good. The Milky Way, Tristana, The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, which is absolutely fantastic. The Phantom of Liberty, which is absolutely fantastic. That Obscure Object of Desire, which is absolutely fantastic. Also, you've got Viridiana as well. Just a lot of wonderful films that I really need to revisit. And then we have Lynch, who hasn't actually made that many films. He's made a hell of a lot of shorts, but he's only made like 10 features. Obviously, he did do Twin Peaks. It's whether you count Twin Peaks in this or not, but I think you kind of have to. The third season was practically like an 18-hour film. So you have Twin Peaks, which, yes, the second season's not as good as the first one because he kind of left to do other things and left it in the hands of inferior artists, to be perfectly honest. But I don't think you can deny the influence Twin Peaks had on television, because after Twin Peaks, just about every sitcom or drama that was set in a small town, everybody has their secrets and perversions and strange little tics. I mean, that's all from Twin Peaks. We're still seeing it in television 30 years later. So whether you like it or not, Twin Peaks is arguably in the top 2 or 3 most influential TV programs of all time. And then he came back with essentially the 18-hour long film. I mean, I'll admit I had really low expectations. I didn't see how he could recapture that magic of that first season and a half, and then when he came back at the end of season 2 to kind of pull it back. But it absolutely blew me away. It's among some of his finest work. He treads that line of it's funny in places and it's downright terrifying in other places, but he also knows himself as an audience. We all wanted Agent Cooper back, and he deliberately kind of dragged out because he knew exactly what the audience wanted. He is one of those filmmakers that you do feel he is genuinely guided by a muse. Actors talk about how it seems as though he doesn't really know what's going to happen because he does all of this. And I don't think that's fake. I think he is a genuine person who just gets kind of vibes coming into his head. As he says, he usually has the music for a film before he's actually written a word. He's just a very special artist. I think he is. You can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure somebody will. He is the greatest director of all time as far as sound design. His sound design in his films is absolutely wonderful. So I think Eraserhead certainly has a lot to do with Brunel, the same way his short films had something to do with Brunel. Again, for me, I would probably give Eraserhead like a 4 out of 5. I'm not super high on Eraserhead. I'm not super high on The Elephant Man either. And I'm not super high on Dune either. Because again, this is what's bothering me, because I know this is supposed to be favourites and your favourite wins, but actually going through these objectively, I'm struggling a little bit with Lynch here. So he then obviously did Blue Velvet, which is an absolute masterpiece, and again one of the most influential films ever made, because again after Blue Velvet there was a whole slew of films set in small towns with people kind of dark secrets. Obviously this was before Twin Peaks. And then he did Wild at Heart in 1990, which again I'm not super high on. It's always the one I kind of forget about. Willem Dafoe is absolutely fantastic in it. It's worth seeing just for Willem Dafoe. But again, it's another 4 out of 5 for me. And then he did, which might be either 1 or 2 of his favourite films, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which is just David Lynch up to 11. Again, when it came out, absolutely bombed, because people who liked the kind of soap opera aspects of the TV show were absolutely shocked by the strength and intensity of the film. And then some, fans of David Lynch who weren't fans of Twin Peaks the TV show didn't like it, so it almost ended his career. It took him a long time to come back from the kind of critical panning that it got. But I do think it's in my top 2 or 3 favourite David Lynch films. So that's an absolute 5-star film. And then we have Lost Highway, which for me is a film of 2 halves. The first 45 minutes is amongst the greatest stuff David Lynch has ever done. The way he shoots space and darkness, and by modern cinematic language, we know when a director opens the frame to like the left or right of a character's head, something genuinely comes out. But when Bill Pullman's going around his maze of a house and Lynch opens up the frame to just darkness and nothing comes out, that is intensely creepy. Obviously Robert Blake's character is intensely disturbing, But then for me, it kind of falls off in the second half, and kind of, dare I say it, at times it almost approaches self-parody sometimes. But then he did The Straight Story, which is another 5 out of 5 for me, an absolutely beautiful lyrical tale. Great performance by Richard Farnsworth, who should have won the Oscar. A great short performance by Harry Dean Stanton. Beautiful score by Angelo Badalamenti, who's a common collaborator. It's a different score than what we're used to with Badalamenti and Lynch. It's just an absolutely beautiful film. Then we have Mulholland Drive, which again is another 5 out of 5 film for me. Just a beautiful, dreamlike, nightmare logic film. Another wonderful score by Badalamenti, and at times nightmare fuel. And then he did Inland Empire, which for me was Lynch taking Lynch to the nth degree. Again, I need to rewatch this. I haven't watched this too often. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but again, I probably need to watch it again. So, as I'm talking through there, and as I was thinking, it's kind of like there's only maybe 4 or 5 Lynch films out of 10 that are 5-star films that I absolutely adore. And when you compare that to Brunel's body of work and the kind of different places Brunel went, I mean, Lynch went different places as well. This is actually a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be when I paired these two up. And even though, like I say, I really need to rewatch Brunel, but the memories of those films, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to seriously reassess when I rewatch the Brunels, what's actually going on here. But in saying all of that, I apologise for waffling on. I think my vote is going to be for David Lynch at this precise moment in time. However, if I rewatch all the Brunels and watch some of the early ones I haven't seen, and then again, probably next year, I'll do a new director ranking, because I didn't just want to do another director ranking this year after doing my kind of category videos last year or the year before. It's hard to keep track. It wouldn't be a surprise to see Brunel a lot higher. So thanks very much for watching this slightly confusing episode. Again, obviously let me know who you prefer, Brunel or Lynch, and why. Because I'm really enjoying your comments. And hopefully you'll join me again for hopefully an easier, for me at least, director battle. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, obviously perturbed, saying goodbye.